Good morning. It's nice to see you all happy and fed and ready to learn more today about what CRCAIH's been doing and what some of our partners have been doing. Again, my name is Dina Aroundhim, and I am a CRCAIH Fellow with the National Congress of American Indians Policy Research Center. And one of our partners that we've had the pleasure to work with over the last couple of years through a NARCH grant and just through some work that we do to build a researcher network. We'll be coming up and talking about some of their work for a program called RezRIDERS. So I have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Julie Lucero. She is an assistant professor in the School of Community Health Sciences at the University of Nevada, Reno. Prior to this position, her professional roles included a research assistant professor at the University of New Mexico School of Medicine and director of research and evaluation at the Office for Diversity at UNM. Her research is focused on health disparities, diversity and inclusion, and dissemination and implementation. She is a mixed methods researcher who utilizes the community-based participatory approach to research, engaging with communities of color and other communities who live with health inequities. Her co-presenter is Ms. Janice Tosa. She's from Pueblo of Jemez, where she's an active participant in cultural and traditional ways of life. She's a fluent Toa speaker who believes in the importance of transmitting the language to younger generations. And as a child growing up in the Pueblo, she was taught the importance of maintaining the traditions of the community, which happens to be running. In the Pueblo of Jemez, running plays a vital role, as Jemez is known for their strong running tradition. Janice was awarded a running scholarship to UNM, where she ran for 4 years as an NCAA Division I athlete. Today, she recognizes the important role that running played in her life and the opportunities that were presented to her as a result. It's through this experience that she understands what being an athlete means for Native American youth and the role that playing sports can have in their lives. Janice works for the Pueblo of Jemez Department of Education, where the first RezRIDERS program was implemented. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Julie Lucero and Ms. Janice Tosa.
So thank you, everybody, for having us today and for that warm welcome. I want to thank CRCAIH for inviting us to this conference. It has been an amazing experience for both Janice and myself, and we are very excited to share the outcomes of the RezRIDERS program, which has been a 3-year feasibility study funded by NIDA, the National Institutes on Drug Abuse. Before we get started, I wanted to show off our uniforms. We're in full-on uniforms. And we'll tell you a little bit more about these and sort of how they came to be. Yesterday, when I was in the audience, there was a presentation that was going on, and there was a lot of talk, and I know that the focus of this conference is on this region, and we're coming from the Southwest. And so I thought, oh no, we really need to give a little bit of context, which isn't something that we're used to doing, because like this conference, we tend to present in our own area where everybody knows the situation. So we're going to provide just a little bit of context first, and then we'll get into the meat of the RezRIDERS program. So just once again, I am Julie Lucero. I am faculty in the public health program at the University of Nevada, Reno. But I'm relatively new there. I moved there about 1.5 years ago, and prior to that, I was at the University of New Mexico, which is where I had the honor to meet and work with Janice over the last few years. So New Mexico, as you know, is in the Southwest. We're right in between Colorado and Texas. And Jemez, Pueblo, is one of the 23 tribal communities located in New Mexico. The Native American population makes up about 10% of the population. And just like you are all very familiar, the rurality of the Pueblos is astounding. It's, we see it all the time in tribal communities. So Jemez is located sort of in the center of the state, and it's about 50 miles away from the closest urban area. So that's 100 miles round trip when folks want to come in and out, go into the city and do all that stuff, go to school, all of these things. So it's become a way of life, right? You just travel a lot. in these rural communities. And so that presented some challenges, but I'm going to let Janice take over and talk a little bit more about the context of the community.
Good morning again. My name is Janice Tosa, and I am from the Pueblo of Jemez. So the Pueblo of Jemez, the population is around 3,000 that actually live on the reservation. We have another about 2,000, 3,000 tribal members who live off the reservation, meaning that they live either in Albuquerque or if they live out of state. So the Pueblo of Jemez, like it was mentioned in the introduction, is I would say that we're very fortunate in that we still maintain our Jemez way of life, and that we still are able to practice our traditional ways of life on a yearly basis. The language also, we are very fortunate that we have 80% fluent rate, where generations like myself were able to still speak the language fluently. I have 2 daughters who I am teaching them the Toa language, and that is their first language. So I am very proud to say that as a community, we have worked hard to maintain this, and we feel that it's very, very important to maintain it and to also to keep it going for other generations, and then for people like my daughters to be able to practice it as they grow up and continue to live the livelihood that we have today. So with that, I would like to go into the program. So RezRIDERS was kind of like just fallen into my lap. When I first started working with the Pueblo of Jemez, I was approached by Greg Tafoya, who is the author of this program, the curriculum. He told me about this program, and I thought that this was something that Jemez really needed because of the activities that it had. And like I said, and it was mentioned in the introduction, Jemez has a strong running. Running is very important to us. Athleticism is very big in our community. So I felt that this RezRIDERS program really did fit the needs of the community. So RezRIDERS stands for Reducing Risk Through Interpersonal Development, Empowerment, Resilience, and Self-Determination. RezRIDERS is a year-round program that is designed to engage youth in extreme sports with cultural mentors. These are the activities that we focus on, and they're all extreme sports. Whitewater rafting that takes place May through June. The rock climbing ropes course is July through August. Community action projects, that's September through November. Snowboarding is December through February. And through these different activities, there's a lot of group bonding that happens, and the connection that the mentors and the youth have and that they create during this program really does affect our students and then the youth, and that they're able to make healthy choices for their future. So RezRIDERS is designed to bring about change in the individual, peer, and community levels. It's very important that as an organization, as a program, we're able to touch upon these different aspects of the community, because it is believed that if students are rooted in the language, are rooted in their culture, and they have a positive self-identity, then they're able to make positive choices for themselves and for not only themselves, but the community as well. So as I mentioned before, RezRIDERS is a Native American author curriculum. It started as a master thesis and was later, as we mentioned, it was funded by the NIDA, National Institutes of Drug Abuse, for the 3-year feasibility test that was implemented in the Pueblo of Jemez among youth grades 8 through 11. So each activity that I mentioned has different aims, and you can see there's pictures of our group doing various activities. The first one was when we did the rafting trip. The 2 on the bottom is when we took students snowboarding, and the other was when we were out rock climbing. So the RezRIDERS program, the curriculum has 4 components. Each component tries to really work and try to impact the lives of students. I think that a lot of these activities, because of the way they're structured, they really challenge our students, not only our students, but mentors as well, because a lot of these things that we do is really extreme. And even for myself, coming into this program, I was thinking, what am I doing? Because I don't know how to swim, you know? So, so whitewater rafting was the scariest thing I ever did. I remember driving into what the canyon was, where we actually put in, and I was so scared. I didn't want to even look at the water as we were driving in, but just putting myself out there and having my students see that and being able to conquer my fear of falling into the river, that a lot of the students were able to kind of see, okay, well, if she can do it, then I can do it. You know, it's setting that example for our students that really makes this program unique, because a lot of the mentors themselves, they see rock climbing as a challenge too, because some of them they didn't know that they were afraid of heights until they were up on the rock, you know, hanging from a rope. So a lot of times, you know, just putting ourselves out there as mentors really did bring about trust between the mentors and the youth. So whitewater rafting, we talk about what it means to be optimistic and what it means to have hope for our future. Rock climbing, we do the team building and self-determination. For rock climbing, team building played a very important role, because as we were preparing for the day's event, what would happen is we would actually take maybe a day to where we would just be learning the terminology and learning how to actually do the belaying and helping, you know, all those different things that we had to do in preparation for actually going out to the rock. So, so team building was big, like I said, big, because as our students were climbing up onto the rock, a lot of them, like I mentioned, they didn't know that they had a fear of heights. And we had one in particular who made it halfway and got stuck. They had been up there for about 30 minutes and didn't know what to do. So it was the responsibility of those people, all of us at the bottom, trying to encourage him to be able to maybe even go up or just to let go. And a lot of times the hardest thing was to let go. That was the hardest and the most challenging, because as individuals, being on top by yourself, you only have your thoughts. You only have your thoughts, and you have those people that are on the bottom trying to encourage you, but a lot of it is on you. So this is where we always talk about, okay, what does it mean to have that self-determination to either continue to go up or have that self-determination and the trust in those that are on the bottom to just let go and that you're being safe. So self-determination was a big one. In rock climbing, CAPS, we talk about, really this one is a time for our students to give back to the community, and this is where our gear comes in. During the CAPS, our students wanted to go out into the community and do something for them. And since Jemez is really traditional, they wanted to do an actual project that would create a strong traditional tie between the youth and the community. So what they did was they made ceremonial objects that still are continued to be used today, called tablitas, and that's what we wear when we do our annual feast days. So they made 72 of these tablitas that are still continued to be worn today, and they still talk about on feast days when they see them, remember we made those, remember, you know, like they still are able to see those and say, yes, I did that. Yes, I was the one that made those. Because of me, we're still able to have that for our community. So they still continue to see them as adults. You know, the first group that graduated are now sophomores in college. So when they come home and then when they participate, they see that, okay, what I've done has made a difference. So really that community action project is youth-driven and gives them that sense of being in the community and sense of wanting to do more for the community and to be able to show other people what community service could really mean. Because a lot of times community service in Jemez was something bad, it was negative. But what we've done is to actually give it a positive spin. So that was CAPS. And then snowboarding, we talk about core values. And what we mean by core values is what it means as individuals, as Jemez people, what it means, what do we value most, and how can that play out in real life, or how can we use that while in snowboarding. Because in snowboarding, we learned that it really does challenge, again, our students probably on a higher level, because learning how to snowboard was not easy. And just going through it myself, it took me, I'm still learning, and it took me probably about a good year or so to learn how to snowboard. So having to learn snowboarding as an adult was a challenge as well. And a lot of times students come in with that same fear as well, but those core values are able to drive our students to keep coming back, because snowboarding doesn't take place within just 1 day or 2 days. It's a 5-day snowboard event where students have to keep coming back. Even though they see that it was a challenge, they continue to come back, and we always encourage them to come back. And the first and second day are always the most challenging, because a lot of times it's cold. A lot of times students are really frustrated because they're not picking it up as fast as their peers, or they're not getting it to where they're able to go down the mountain smoothly without falling. So a lot of it's really having to look at yourself and being able to say, okay, I can do this, I can make it up the top of the mountain. And by the 5th day, these students are at the top of the mountain. It's amazing how these students are able to pick up snowboarding within 5 days, when it's taking me like 2 years to pick it up. It's amazing how driven they are once they get to the mountain. And just being in that environment itself just really brings out the best in them, or sometimes the worst, because I've seen students being on the mountain just so frustrated and they just break down. And we had one student in particular who had a hard time, and she couldn't do it anymore. So I asked her, do you want to go and sit and we can talk? And she said yes. So we both went down and we talked about, she really opened up to me and said that as a child she had, like all these things that she had to deal with, and being in this program has really helped her and been able to really talk about it and have actually people, adults that she trusted and that she could tell things to, or she knew that we were always going to be there for her. So it's just a lot of things that our students experience while in these different activities that really make RezRIDERS unique. As mentioned, the mentors. So we are called the Tribal Research Team. This is different from what has been around, I guess. We have taken the advisory committee role and kind of made it more fitting to what RezRIDERS is, because the Tribal Research Team, they serve as mentors, and we serve as not only mentors, but we serve as an action body, where our mentors, our TRT, come into the program not only as mentors, but we're able to tell us, okay, as an organization or as a program, what can we do to make this better? What can we do to actually fit the needs of the community? So they're really an action body that plays a vital role in this program, and they are the rock. And the mentors that I have, we had 10 of them, and I always told them, because of you, this program is successful, because the research team, the mentors, took time out of their own busy schedules. They lived and they worked in the community, but they also were able to get back to our students, our youth, because this TRT research team role is not paid. They have to take time out of their busy schedule on weekends to come and do the program. And they were there always willing to do it for the youth. And I always told them it was because of them that this program is successful, because they are the positive role models that our students never had. They are the rock that maybe the support system that they never had in their own respective families or the community. So having the students see these individuals from the community really gave a new perspective to our students, and seeing that, yes, there is hope for my future, and that if they're able to do it and they're from my community, then I also have that chance and that opportunity to do the same. So they're really important, and they play the most important role in this program. Our motto, do as I say, not as I do, is our most, I think, lived motto, because we don't just sit around as a research team and telling our students, okay, go out and do this, go out and do that while I sit here and watch you guys. No, we play an important role, and we're there alongside the participants every step of the way. Even through the community action projects, we're there to help them to plan and to implement the community action projects. Everything, like I said, they do, we do. So it challenges the youth and the mentors to really come together to really help each others out, because as I mentioned before, we are also challenged too. So they are able to say, our youth are able to really come back and really help us as mentors to say, okay, you can do this, and we all can do this together, and together we can make this happen. So I feel that having this model really represents what the RezRIDERS program is, because we're there with the students, and we're there every step of the way, and we are faced with the same challenges that they're faced with. And having that, I think, really opened the doors for the opportunity for our students to trust us even more. And we're able to provide more to our students because of that. And then now I'll turn it over to Julie.
Okay, so as you can see, this was a really powerful, it was a really powerful program. Just sitting back and listening to Janice, I've never heard her talk about it before, and it made me sort of tear up. I'm really just excited and feel extremely honored to be a part of this, that they let me be a part of this. So the science of it, this was a quasi-experimental design. The intervention group was the RezRIDERS group, and then we had non-participants. We don't necessarily like to call them controls. In science speak, that's what they were. But in all actuality, the program was open to everybody. The inclusion criteria was that they had to live within reservation lands. They had to be between 11 and 18, between 8th grade and 11th grade, and just needed to participate, wanted to have the drive to participate. And so there were a lot of things, the fear, as you can imagine. So one thing I didn't mention was that New Mexico is landlocked. There is very little water. So as Janice said, she didn't know how to swim, and that's very typical. So when you had kids noticing that they were going to go whitewater rafting, fear was one of the things that really prevented a lot of kids from not signing up. So they may have shown interest, but then they decided not to do it. So those that did sign up then went into the intervention group, and those that didn't, we asked them if they would then be part of the non-participant group. So we had two comparisons. Hang on, let me go back here. So what we were looking at, I'm sorry to get this far and yet not tell you what we were trying to do. We had two outcomes that we really wanted to impact. One was to reduce substance use and through self-regulation. So this was not an abstinence project. We know that this is a part of adolescents' life, so we wanted to improve self-regulation. And then we also wanted to influence depression, so we wanted to lower that depression scores on the scale. Now, our independent variables, we know from the literature of positive youth development that pro-social bonding, hope and optimism, coping skills, empowerment, and gratitude are things that tend to influence young people's decision towards healthy behavior. So those were our independent variables. So one other thing that I failed to mention is we were really looking at the strengths of young people. We know that young people have these internal, young Native people have these strengths, these inherent strengths that we tend to overlook in science. I say this because every single article that you pull out of journals will start out saying something to the effect of American Indian Alaska Natives have the highest disparities in X. We focus so much on these disparities and we tend to ignore the resilience, the things, the strengths that really make American Indians so wonderful, right? Those things that we know will help to improve health. So that was one of our focuses here. We didn't want to tell kids how bad they were. We wanted to ask them, how do we help others improve their resilience? So in the outcomes, we ended up having 55 total participants, and we had about equal participants as far as gender goes. The mean high school grade was 11th grade. And we did two things. We asked parents, so sometimes we have social biases or the social desirability bias in self-reports. And so in order to get around that, we wanted to ask parents, have you seen any sort of influence that this program has had on your child? We had 5 interviews, so it's definitely not generalizable, but we had 5 interviews, which was really exciting. And then just to remind you, this was a feasibility study. And then we had the quantitative data, and so we had the participants and non-participants take exactly the same questionnaire. And what we found when we did the t-test, so in the intervention group, we compared the pre to the post and tried to see if there was a statistical significance between the means of the pre and the post. And there was for one scale. There was for the hope scale. So that meant to us that we were really influencing the hope that people had, that these young participants had for the future. And that was significant at less than 0.05. So then what we saw was in our participants, we had the control group, so they were not exposed. And then we had this other group within the participant group that was sort of minimal exposure, so people that were coming to the activities, but maybe weren't completing all of the activity clusters. And then we had another group that completed all of the activity clusters and came to all of the meetings. And so we wanted to see how statistically the differences were between the 3 exposure groups. And what we found between them was that there was a difference in depression between the maximum group and the no exposure. And that was statistically significant. So we were able to move the scale as far as depression goes, and we were able to move the scale for behavioral disengagement. So more and more people didn't disengage from the group, they actually wanted to participate more. So we moved the scale on 3 very important elements. Now this is a really small sample, so I don't think that we can necessarily generalize, but we can say that this is a promising program. Now, in the qualitative data for the parents' interviews, we found 2 themes across the 5 interviews. One was that RezRIDERS seemed to have an effect on children, or on the young people's decision making. So we had some that really decided, you know, look, what I want to do is after I get out of high school, I want to go to college, or I want to go to the military. We actually have quite a few of these young people that ended up going into the military. And, you know, we can speculate as to why. I choose to believe that they decided that they didn't have anything to be afraid of because of the challenges that they had overcome. And the second thing that we found from the qualitative interviews was that the communication became more open between the child and their parents. So it influenced the child-parent relationship. Now, once again, this is a small sample, but I believe that if we were to go into a larger study, that we would find similar, if not more, impactful outcomes. So then the challenges. There were some serious, now this was a feasibility study once again, so we wanted to make sure that this program was actually doable, right? And so one of the things that we found was that in transportation, this is one of the reasons why I mentioned that it's 100 miles round trip to the nearest metropolitan area, but then getting to the mountain, to the ski resort, and getting to the whitewater rafting area was even further. And some of the tribal vehicles weren't four-wheel drive, so getting up to the mountain in the snow became a problem. So we ended up working through those. This brilliant woman was the one that figured out what she needed to do in order to get the kids where they needed to go. And then developing partnerships with extreme sport companies. So there were a lot of organizations that had done lots of programming with young people, and they had their own questionnaires, and they wanted to be able to give the kids participating in RezRIDERS the questionnaires. And Janice was like, nope, those are our participants. We have our own pre-post. We own our own data, and we're not going to give you guys anything else. You know, if you want to talk about that and we can renegotiate it, okay. But for the most part, it was a deal breaker. And then there were other issues related to research. Or these also impacted research. So the transportation issue, there were only there were enough spots for 15 people, so in the vans, so we were only able to take X amount of young people, and the parents, whether or not they were willing to be part of the interviews or not. And then there were some other issues. Do you want to?
So the issues that related to our research was that in the beginning we had done a research design that said that, okay, we're going to interview, or we're going to have students, youth answer this questionnaire by actually having to obtain parental permission. So that became a challenge, because what I was doing was I was actually going to the community schools to talk to these students about the program, and then to talk about possibly still participating in the program as non-participants. But we found that that was hard, because we had to go back to their parents to ask them for permission to not only participate in the program, but just to fill out a questionnaire. And we found that going to the parents to ask them to fill out this questionnaire was something that the students didn't like as well, because these questions that we had on this questionnaire asked them about their usage, their alcohol usage, if they've ever done, X, or if they've ever done Y, so just having their parents to fill out their permission to participate kind of just already send a red flag to our students, because then they didn't answer these questions honestly. And we really wanted them to be honest about what they're really doing. And a lot of times, as youth, you don't want your parents to know what you're really doing, So that we had to change it, and we went through the IRB process and said, okay, we're just gonna use IDs. So they're just going to be 1 through whatever, and we're going to use those, and that way we don't have to actually put names to these questionnaires. And we found that that was really effective, because students were answering these questions very honestly. They were telling us, okay, if they've ever drank, if they've ever done, whatever. So having that, I think, really helped our research, and really understanding what our students were doing and how we can better help them, and help and instilling them all the things that we have been talking about, RezRIDERS, and then having that ability to make better decisions for themselves. So in conclusion, we found that doing this research, we found that it is a promising program, and that it could be translated into any community. It doesn't have to be tribal. It doesn't have to be on a reservation. It can it can work for anybody, really. It can work for any youth, because all the things that we talk about, all the different aims that we try to hit, those are the things that youth really want. And just because they're from an urban or, they're native doesn't mean that, you only use certain parts of it. No, like all students, we found that all students, regardless of where they come from, really need to have that optimism for their future and to be able to have the skills they need to create a better life for themselves and for their community. And the biggest thing is that we focus on the positive growth, as Julie mentioned, of the youth. We focus on things that make them resilient, things that make them unique, and not focusing on, okay, well, you've done this or you've done that, and that's why you're going to be this. No, as youth, we focus on, okay, you're a fantastic athlete, you're really good at school, so these are the opportunities that you have and that you can take advantage of and do something good for yourself. Because through the different prevention messages that we're able to talk to our students, we just don't say, okay, like it's scripted and you say this when you do this, or you say this, or we don't do that in RezRIDERS. We work with what we are given, and I feel that if there are enough mentors out, in different communities, if they're able to do that with their youth, if they're able to connect with their youth, then the youth are better off because they have that support system that maybe they were lacking. They have that support system that they know will always be there. And even till this day, a lot of the students that have already graduated, and those are in the military or in the college, they still come back to my office to talk about what's going on, what they are currently doing, So just having that connection with the youth really not only makes me happy, but I feel that I've done my part in making a difference in their life, because a lot of times, who knows what they're really going through, and sometimes they tell us and sometimes they don't. And if they choose not to tell us, then we just try to provide them with maybe more guidance, positive and reaffirming that they're going to be okay, even if they're going through whatever it is that they're going through, that because we're here and because of the challenges that they faced through this program and learned about being optimistic and being hopeful for their futures, that they're actually making a difference in their own lives. Do you have any questions? Thank you. No, so what we did was we developed it, but we took different questions from different scales. So like as Julie mentioned, we did hope and scale, but the questions that we used were, so what we already do have in the community is also a program called Family Circle Project. And that Family Circle Project, it took about 3-4 years to actually plan the program, and that's where we got some of the questionnaires, because they have a larger instrument that's 200 and some questions. So we only took certain parts of those questions and put it into a 2-page interview or questionnaire. So it's more of like questions that were related to the youth and their use, because the Family Circle Project also is a prevention program. The test, the study, which one? Okay, so what, so if you go to the RezRIDERS.org, we also, you can find more information on that.
Sounds like a very wonderful program. I'm curious, do you have just a general idea of how much, what the cost was, in terms of the students?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, we do. we found that this program can be really costly, just because of the sports that they actually do. And a lot of times the reason why students or youth in our community don't, participate in that is because the access, it can be really expensive. So we found that the budget that we had was roughly around $60,000. And half of it was really just to implement the program, to be able to purchase gear for our students when they go snowboarding, and then to pay for all these others. Because when we went snowboarding, we had to pay for the lessons. We had to pay for the transportation. So $60,000 was kind of the annual budget that we had to work with. And that's also including the food. And then we found that students, when we took them, since Julie mentioned that we're far from the resort, we had 1 year where we actually took the students into Santa Fe and we stayed overnight for 2 nights. So we were able to do back-to-back programming. So that was also a cost that we generated through that. So around $60,000 was the annual budget.
Can you talk a little bit about the curriculum that's associated? It looks like there was a curriculum developed by Greg Tafoya in 2007. And how did you implement that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the curriculum, as I mentioned, started as a master thesis. And when he developed it, he kind of took his own experiences and made it into a curriculum. And when Jemez started participating or got the program, we used the curriculum, but we found that there were some things that needed to be changed. So the curriculum in the end changed a lot. We talk in the curriculum, you can do, say for example, you wanted to implement the program in your community, then we would give you the curriculum, and it goes step by step on what you need to do to prepare to having your briefs and then your debriefs, all the things that you might want to consider. And then also we put in there things that like to-do lists in order to prepare for each event. But the only thing that RezRIDERS, the curriculum, doesn't do is we don't have a script in there saying, okay, this is what you're going to say at this time, this is what you're going to do at this time. We just give kind of like an indication of, okay, when we go snowboarding, these are the steps you're going to take to make sure that your students are safe. These are the steps that you're going to take to make sure that you have your tickets. Those type of things. It's not a scripted curriculum where you pick it up and you're going to read off of it when you're talking to the youth. We give you examples on how to talk to our youth and how the dialogue should flow, because a lot of it has to flow naturally. And it comes from the mentors. The curriculum is just examples of how you should be able to prepare for the program. But it's, like I said, it's not scripted, because we found that if the dialogue between the youth and the mentors is natural, then you build greater trust between you and the students. And they're more likely to come back again for all the other events. So.
Okay, the other part of this is, would you talk a little bit more about the youth-driven action projects?
Yeah, so the youth so out of the 3 years, the youth did the community action projects. And the way we started that was we asked the students, okay, what do you see in the community that's an issue? They identify the issues and they execute a plan to make changes in their community. So as I mentioned before, Jemez is strong in our cultural way of life, but we're also seeing that there's a shift. There's a shift between younger generations in that they don't practice as often, or the language is there. We're becoming a community that is experiencing language shift. So they saw that as a problem, so then they were able to ask our leadership to be able to make these cultural objects for the community. And they actually got the okay, and they did that. And like I said in my presentation, they see that and that they have that, I guess that, not the drive, but I have the greater appreciation for the language. And then there's other two that they did was where they collected toys for our younger students who are part of the social services program, where their parents are either incarcerated or their youth, foster youth, or they're having to go through the system because whatever is happening in their community or in their family that's not really helpful. You know, they're not experiencing things that are positive. So those toys that were collected were given to them and were given to them during their Christmas. So they saw that there was a need for those students because obviously, you know, there wasn't anything that we didn't know who they were in the community, but it was just the fact that we were able to provide gifts for these students because a lot of times we don't know if they even got gifts for Christmas. We don't know that if, you know, they had a safe holiday because a lot of times in our community, holidays were a time where more domestic violence happens. So they saw that and they wanted to make a difference, and not only for those students, but those families that have to go through that. So that was one that they did, and they also did a food drive, and they also gave the food back to the community and did bring in about, I don't remember how many cans of food they brought in, but those cans were given, like I said, given back to the community for them to use. So all of the things that they did in community action projects was positive, and it had to deal with an issue that they saw is really prevalent in our community. Oh, and then in order to participate in these CAPS projects, they put in a run. So we hosted a fun run where they brought the toys, where they bought the canned food, and then they were able to participate in the run. Because like I said, running is an important aspect in our culture.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.